you know, and that's why it's so important to just keep fighting, you know. Like, there's people that, like I said, didn't have the same childhood that I had, but you know, they still made a way. Like, and that's the biggest battle is like, you know, you had everything, you know, and you still gotta be a person that is competing in this real world, and it's just it's a battle that everybody has to take on, you know. But I always say everybody's story is different, but how can you build your story? You know, I say a lot of the my ability to have such intellect and such, you know, interesting perspectives was because I've had tastes of realities. I've had harsh reality checks, and um, you know, I accepted it, and you know, I became more humble because of it, and um, but I think what allowed me to have it was, like I said, I have having a present father in my life, you know, that allowed for so many things to allow me to become better. You know, I didn't have to, you know, have those things that a lot of other young black kids, you know, they get distracted by. It's like they ain't gotta I have a dad, or you know, or all these things. And you know, as you're trying to reach new levels, you have those things that are holding you back, you know. um I'm very blessed and grateful to not have that. And sometimes it's a guilty feeling as well, because being black with a dad and with married parents still to this day is rare. um and and that's why, like, I pray every day, and grateful for what I have, because it's not a common thing. And you know, I take that with a grain of salt, because understanding that when your life isn't common, you know, then that demands an even bigger uncommonality of working hard and really pushing the limits and still competing for those that, you know, don't have the same lifestyle as you, but you know, you still have aspirations. You know, just because you were you had a great upbringing doesn't negate the fact that you can still have aspirations. And so I want to be, you know, definitely the example for people that, you know, still kind of had a lot of stuff, you know, growing up, but it's still a battle, you know. I want to be the example for those people, you know, and still for black people that may not have had that, you know. Um, just because we don't relate on certain things doesn't mean that I don't know the realities of being black. Like, I, we would still instill the values and integrity and honesty and all of these things that are still important. You know, you can have, you know, present people, but it's still, you know, putting those values. Both my parents are retired teachers, you know, so it's like there's a reason why, you know, I talk the way I talk. You know, I've been around teaching my whole life, you know, and you know, it's uh what's the word, inevitably fell upon me, you know, to convey words and to, you know, put things out in a way that people can receive it. So Um, it was very, very vulnerable. You know, few moments, but um, I told you, like, this is gonna be a space for people that want to really get to know me is gonna really get to know me. I think authenticity and genuine um, connections always make the best of relationships, friendships, and um, it separates the real from the fake. So, um, but I do thank y'all.